Hi, welcome to the Your Life as a Poem workshop presented for the Indianapolis Public Library's Adult Summer Reading Program. My name is Lydia Johnson, and I'm a local poet and writer representing the Indiana Writers Center. I'm so excited to share some ideas and poems with you to get you started writing about your life. So the Indiana Writers Center is a nonprofit organization that provides writing classes to writers of all ages and backgrounds. So workshops and classes like this are a part of what they do on the regular. The classes are taught by published writers in Indiana. And if you click this laptop here, it'll take you to the Indiana Writers Center website. You can also click these icons over here to be directed to their social media pages. At the end of the presentation, I will include a link that will allow you to download the presentation as a PDF. Everywhere you see an image, it's a clickable link that takes you to a resource or something that is corresponding to the information on that page. So, when you're thinking about your life and writing about your life, everything has the potential to matter to you. So your favorite type of food, your favorite color, an off remark that someone said to you in the fourth grade, it could all be subject matter and fodder for your writing. But in a poem, you have to choose a subject that matters to you and a subject that is also interesting for the reader. And you can do that by not generalizing the subject matter that you choose. You need to make things specific to you. So if you want to talk about your favorite shoes from the fourth grade, you could maybe put in a detail about the brand of shoes or the color that you always wore. Maybe you had fancy shoelaces. When you write about yourself as an individual, it has a way of becoming universal for the reader. So they can say, wow, you had shoes that look like that. My shoes didn't look like this. And it's a way for people to connect across experiences. So it's important to be specific and to show and not tell. You can also use props and memory aids to help you find your subject. It may take some time, but having some things to help you jog your memory, like old photos, mementos, and news articles, can help you think about the things that have been meaningful to you throughout your life. So, framing your life for a poem. It is difficult to narrow down the things that you want to write about because there can be so many things that you're interested in writing about your life. But a way to narrow down the subject matter is to make it into a specific frame about your life. So you can talk about an event, you can write about an age, you can write about a specific moment in your life, you can write about a memory that you've had, or you can write about a lesson. So I've chosen some sample poems where speakers share parts of their lives in each of these ways. So the first is writing about an event. You can write about a specific event in your life, and it could be something that is a significant formative experience. You can write about something that was trivial at the time that it happened, or as you look back and say, oh, this event didn't really matter that much, but it's something that you remember, it's something that keeps coming back to your mind when you think about high school or middle school or early parenthood. It could be something that is time bound to a specific time in your life, maybe a specific decade, a specific week. Writing about an event allows you to reveal your thoughts and concerns at the time that the event was happening. So the poem that I chose to represent this type of life poem is Hospital Interlude by Marilyn Chin, and I'll read it. Hospital Interlude. I rented a red Miata. I returned to the hospital. I returned to the hospital and climbed the wall. I climbed the wall through a dim lit corridor. The dim lit corridor leads to her empty sick room. Her sick room was empty, but the moon was full. The moon was full. The cicadas were crying. The cicadas were crying. Her unmade bed in the moonlight. Her unmade bed in the moonlight, an eternal stain. I veered and turned, but couldn't find the exit. I couldn't find the exit, I said to my mother. I said to my mother, the song is not over. The song is not over. You forgot to tutor me. You forgot to tutor me the last secret phrases. The last secret phrases in my rented red Miata. In my rented red Miata, I veered and turned. I veered and turned, but couldn't find the exit. I couldn't find the exit. The rain in my hair. So in Marilyn Chin's poem, the speaker writes about the death of a loved one. So you know exactly what the speaker is thinking, you know how they feel about the loss. You have specific details in the rented red Miata and the scene in the hospital room. And the repetition of the lines creates maybe a sense of anxiety, or can even mimic the act of remembering things about the event and using those memories to help with retelling. The next type of poem about your life is a poem that's about a specific age. So writing about a specific age allows you to reconstruct yourself at that age for the reader. You can show them the things that matter to you then. You can show them your conceptualization of who you were at that time. And it could be you defined yourself by your relationship status, or the school that you went to, or the type of music that you listen to, or your hair, or your ethnic group, or your neighborhood. You can explain within the poem why this age in particular matters. Why are you talking about being 25 as opposed to turning 21? What matters about this specific age so much that you decided to write about it? And you can also tie in social or cultural touchstones that let the reader know a bit more about what's happening in the world outside of yourself at this time. So Lucille Clifton does this, in her poem, The 38th Year. So I'll read it for you. The 38th year. My 38th year, the 38th year of my life. Plain as bread, round as a cake, an ordinary woman. An ordinary woman. I had expected to be smaller than this, more beautiful, wiser in African ways, more confident. I had expected more than this. I will be 40 soon. My mother once was 40. My mother died at 44, a woman of sad countenance, leaving behind a girl awkward as a stork. My mother was thick. Her hair was a jungle, and she was very wise and beautiful and sad. I have dreamed dreams for you, Mama, more than once. I have wrapped me in your skin and made you live again, more than once. I have taken the bones you hardened and built daughters, and they blossom and promise fruit like African trees. I am a woman now, an ordinary woman. In the 38th year of my life, surrounded by life, a perfect picture of Blackness blessed, I had not expected this loneliness. If it is Western, if it is the final Europe in my mind, if in the middle of my life, I am turning the final turn into the shining dark, let me come to it whole and holy, not afraid, not lonely, out of my mother's life, into my own, into my own. I had expected more than this. I had not expected to be an ordinary woman. So we know that mortality is on the speaker's mind. You can tell that the speaker decided to write about the age of 38 specifically because it's close to the milestone age of 40 that the speaker remembers her mother being. Her mother died at a young age. We can tell that the speaker defines herself at this time as an ordinary woman. Whatever ordinary means to her, that's what she is. She describes herself as round as bread. We see that socially and culturally at that time, the speaker wants to root herself in an African identity and practices, and she definitely defines herself as being a mother, which also connects her to her mother, who passed away at a young age. The next type of poem is writing a poem about a moment. So a poem about a moment is a little different than writing about an event. In this type of poem, the reader is experiencing the moment with you. So you can share with them exactly what you want them to know about the moment. You can choose details and setting and imagery that shows them exactly what you want them to see about the moment. And it also gives you the opportunity to show how you saw yourself at that time that the moment was happening. So the poem that represents that for me is Grinding the Lens by Linda Gregg, and I'll read it to you. Grinding the lens. I am pulling myself together. Don't want to go on a trip. I have painted the living room white and taken out most of my things. The room has never been so empty. Just now, a banging thunder and suddenly falling rain. I leave the typewriter and run outside in my nightgown and take the cotton blanket off the line. It is summer, and I am in the middle of my life, alone and happy. So in this poem, it's easy to assume that the first half of the poem would signify that the speaker is having some sort of emotional state that's not a great one. They have to pull themselves together. They don't want to go on the trip. You can tell that they're in some sort of transitional phase because they've taken out most of their things from their living space. They've painted the room white, almost as if they're moving. But then at the end of the poem, the second half of the poem, you can see that the poet, the speaker, is in the middle of their life. And even though there's all of this newness and blankness around them, they're alone and they're happy with the changes that are happening in their life. So you can see that there are specific details that the speaker uses to express their feelings in this moment. They're in an all white room. There's a sudden thunder and rain. They have a typewriter in the room. They run outside in their nightgown. They take a cotton blanket off the line. And all of that seems like a really carefree and simple moment that they're sharing with the reader. So you can write about a specific memory. And when you have a memory, there's usually some sort of sensory detail that brings you back into the moment and the memory that you experienced. So maybe you smelled something that reminds you of a fragrance that someone used to wear, or maybe you've tasted a piece of a meal that makes you think of something that one of your family members cooked when you were a child. Maybe you heard a song, and as soon as you heard the song, you remembered exactly what you were doing when you heard that song the first time, or however many times you played it on your record player or your Walkman or your iPod or iPad or whatever. So it's important to have details in a poem about a memory that helps the person enter into the memory themselves, even though they didn't experience it. So poems about memories can rely heavily on place and setting, and that's to help set the physical or emotional scene. And you can have other people in a poem about a memory, and they can serve as a window or a mirror into yourself and your concerns at that time. and rich imagery helps to make the memory real for others. So the poem that depicts a memory that I chose is Velvet Mesquite by Eduardo C. Corral. Velvet Mesquite. Early in the morning, he gathers gloves and burlap sacks. I pour whiskey into his flask. I search for the pickup's keys. The engine stalls as he turns the ignition. I shout a few words, arroyo, socorro, arroz. The rolled R's coax the engine into a roar. Once I chased a stench through a grove of saguaro and a patch of grass, found the carcass of an ash-colored coyote, a gash jagging its pelt. I knelt, touched its ears and snout. My face rippled beneath my fingers as if I were troubling water. Winter, deciduous bark, stripped, braided into rope, yellow, green leaves, forking trunk, nurse tree. He stacks branches. I haul pods of mesquite. I haul stacks of mesquite pods, shirtless. Worn out, we rest in the shade. I draw squares in the sand with bottle caps. We play checkers. If our fingers touch, en passant, King's Gambit, the scorpion on his belt buckle raises its silver tail for my father. So there's a physical setting to this poem, which is a desert landscape. You can see that there's space in the poem itself. Let me go back so I can show you. You can see that there's space in the poem itself, that the words are sort of on opposite ends with very few instances of them touching in the middle. And that gives you into the speaker's concerns in the poem. And that even comes up in the last stanza. If our fingers touch, the scorpion on his belt buckle raises its silver tail, as if the scorpion itself and as if the owner of the scorpion, the person wearing the belt buckle, is feeling like it's a very dangerous situation and they need to attack. There's also a snake that's ready to pounce, a desiccated wolf, and the other man feeling threatened by closeness. So by all of these details, we can come to some ideas and feelings about the speaker by them expressing all of these things in this situation, in this memory, and that they are putting them out for others to read and make conclusions from. So the next type of life poem is a poem about a lesson. And poems about lessons involve a comparison of a past self to a present self. So you have the opportunity to provide details about what's different now. You can provide physical differences, emotional differences, geographic differences, whatever the poem calls for. And as you've been listening, I'm sure you've heard me say the word opportunity a zillion times. And I'm using the word opportunity because everything that you put into a poem is a choice. So you have the opportunity, the chance, the choice, the decision to put whatever you want in the poem itself. You can choose the details, you can choose the people, you can rewrite the actual experience that you had as the opposite. You can rewrite your life in a poem. So everything that you put into a poem is something that you choose. And if you don't want something in there, you don't have to put it in. So through this type of poem, you're taking the reader on a journey of some sort. And they don't have to know every step of the process to feel the value and the lesson that comes at the end. So in this instance, in a lesson poem, let's say you're writing about failing to make the Olympic trials and you did it 14 times. You don't have to write about every single time you didn't make it, you could maybe speed it up. You could slow it down to one specific tryout that you had that encapsulates the feeling of disappointment or the feeling of excitement or whatever feeling you're trying to explain to the reader. Um, you can use that to stand in for the whole experience. And people don't have to see all of the little steps in between to get the point. So the poem I'm reading for this type of life poem is Stop Me If You've Heard This One Before by Kaba Akbar. Stop me if you've heard this one before. I can't even remember my name. I who remember so much. Football scores, magic tricks, deep love so close to God it was practically religious. When you fall asleep in that sort of love, you wake up with bruises on your neck. I don't have drunks, sirs. I have adventures. Every day, my body follows me around asking for things. I try to think louder, try to be brilliant, wildly brilliant. We all want the same thing, to walk in sincere wonder, like the first man to hear a parrot speak. But we live on an enormous flatness floating between two oceans. Sometimes you have to leave whatever's real to you. You have to clomp through fields and kick the caps off all the toadstools. Sometimes you have to march all the way to Galilee or the literal foot of God Himself before you realize you've already passed the place where you were supposed to die. I can no longer remember the being afraid, only that it came to an end. So in this poem, you can tell that the speaker is on a journey. You don't know exactly what type of journey it is, but you can kind of take some clues from I don't have drunk sirs, I have adventures. Every day my body follows me around asking for things. You can see that the speaker is bringing up a physical journey, marching all the way to Galilee, an emotional journey, or the literal foot of God Himself before you realize that you already passed the place where you're supposed to die. You can recognize in the last two lines, I can no longer remember the being afraid, only that it came to an end, that there's been some change in the speaker and that they're no longer afraid. And while they didn't themselves know what it took to get to that point of being unafraid, they know that they're now there, and that wasn't their original state. So next, we are going to do some work to help generate a subject for your poem. So at this point, I'm going to turn off my camera, but you'll still be able to hear me. So 1 second. Okay, so here are some questions to help you think about events that may have happened in your life. And some of these questions were adapted from In the Palm of Your Hand, the Poet's Portable Workshop by Steve Cowett. What was your favorite song when you were 16? Who was your first crush? Recall a secret that you once had. Describe a building or a house that you once lived in. Did anything happen to you near a body of water? Describe a bad thing you did in adulthood. What is something you're proud to have done in your life? When was your happiest moment? Can you list what made you so happy? So out of the questions, which of them made you want to start writing immediately? Which question did I say and something popped into your head and you're like, oh, that's something, I could write that down. Can you reimagine a few of those memories? So I'm going to go back to the questions so you can see them. So I want you to take a few moments to make some short notes about the memories that come up for 2 questions. And I will set a timer on my end for 2 minutes. I'll mute myself. And then I'll come back when the 2 minutes is over. Time starts now. Okay, time's up. So each of the sample poems included specific details about the speaker's life. What specific details can you add to your memory notes? So I hope that you have a full sheet of paper or a notebook or lots of post-it notes, whatever you're using, because now I want you to write down as many details as you can about the two memories you chose for 3 minutes. And I will set the timer starting right now. Okay, time is up. So now I want you to try your hand at tying your scattered words, your notes, maybe some images that came up and you wrote them down, and associations into a few lines. It doesn't matter how good they are because good is relative. And remember that the lines don't have to be in the order of importance or specific order of time according to whatever you're writing about. And at this point, you might be leaning more toward writing about one question as opposed to the other because I asked you to choose two questions. And that's perfectly fine. Everything you've already written for the second question is on the page and you can go back to it later. So if you have one question that you're feeling a pull toward writing about, go right ahead and do that. So we're going to take 5 minutes to put everything together. The time starts now. You've got 2 minutes and 30 seconds left. Okay, time's up. So now you're going to review your notes and see if you can add just a few more things. Ask yourself if the memory had a smell associated with it, if there's a song that you think of when you think of the memory, if there's a specific feeling or emotion that comes up, or color. Let's take 2 minutes for you to write down your findings. Time starts now. Okay, time's up. So this next part won't be timed because it could take you longer than 5 minutes. So I want you to work through this in your own time. So the next step is to arrange the lines that you've written in a way that works best for you. So you could start by creating a beginning, middle, or end to your scene or experience by the lines that you already have. Or you could arrange the lines by the images that feel the most powerful, put those first. Or you could read what you've written out loud and arrange by sound. And another option is to randomly pick a line and assign it a place. So you can say, this line is my final line, and then build the rest of your poem from there. So what you're going to be doing is taking what you have, making your arrangement your first draft. And it's a ripe starting place. I'm sure there are lots of good things that you have in there that will help you as you continue on writing this poem. So you can look at your lines and fill in the blanks. What else do you need to include to get the point across to a reader? And if you need to, you can re-enter your memories with even more notes. You can go back to the note-taking sections that I have on the slideshow and see if you can squeeze some more out of yourself. You can also reword the things that you've already written, and you can revise the first draft that you've written as many times as you need. Remember, it didn't just take you one day to live your life, and it might take you longer than one day to write about it. So this slide has the featured poets from our presentation. If you click on one of the covers of their books, it will take you to that poet's page on the Poetry Foundation website, and you can read more about their life and their work. And you can also read additional poems by that poet. So this is the point where I say thank you. Thank you so much for clicking on this class. Thank you so much for choosing to incorporate this class into your writing practice. I thank you for being curious about your life. I thank you for giving yourself the opportunity to write about it and to put some things into perspective that maybe you haven't thought about before. So if you go to this link, you can type it in your web browser. It'll take you to a PDF that you can download, and it'll be this entire presentation. And once you download the presentation, you can click on every image, like I said, and it'll take you to the poem, and it'll also take you to the poet's individual pages on the Poetry Foundation. You can also click the second slide to learn more information about the Indiana Writers Center. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And may you have a long life, and may your writing be fruitful. Have a great day.